It was just after midnight, April 26th, 1986. The town of Pripyat slept peacefully under a cloudy sky. Street lights hummed, apartment windows glowed faintly. In the distance, a concrete giant rose over the horizon, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. To the families asleep in their beds, it was just a workplace, a symbol of progress, of power, of the future. No one knew that in a few hours this quiet night would become one of the worst disasters in history. While the world slept, a deadly chain of events had already begun inside reactor number 4. It was just after midnight, April 26th, 1986. The town of Pripyat slept peacefully under a cloudy sky. Street lights hummed, apartment windows glowed faintly. In the distance, a concrete giant rose over the horizon, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. To the families asleep in their beds, it was just a workplace, a symbol of progress, of power, of the future. No one knew that in a few hours this quiet night would become one of the worst disasters in history. While the world slept, a deadly chain of events had already begun inside reactor number 4. To run the test, the power of the reactor had to be lowered. But something went wrong. The reactor power plunged far below the safe zone. In panic, the operators began pulling out control rods, the very rods that normally kept the reaction under control. They disabled safety systems that stood in their way. One by one, alarms lit up. They were not supposed to do this. The reactor was becoming unstable, but the schedule had to be followed. Reports had to be written. And so the test continued. No one in that room truly understood how close they were to disaster. At 1:23 a.m., the test finally began. The operators reduced the flow of cooling water. The reactor was already unstable, but on the surface, everything looked normal enough. Numbers on the control panel danced. Steam built up inside the reactor. The power levels started to rise, too fast. In the control room, confusion grew. Dials spun into the red. The reactor's behavior was no longer predictable. Then, in a desperate attempt to regain control, the operators hit a final button, the AZ-5. The emergency shutdown. It should have saved them. Instead, it triggered hell. Inside the reactor core, the control rods jammed as they slid in. Design flaws turned a shutdown into a spike. Power surged. Fuel channels ruptured. In less than a second, the reactor's power output shot to unimaginable levels. Then, a massive explosion tore through Reactor 4. The 2,000-ton reactor lid was hurled into the air. Concrete shattered like glass. A column of fire and glowing debris shot into the night sky. The nuclear core lay open to the world, burning with invisible radiation. In Pripyat, people woke to a distant thunder. Windows rattled. Children sat up in bed, wondering if a storm had begun. At the plant, chaos. Flames licked the shattered roof. Burning chunks of graphite from the core itself were scattered around like black glowing stones. Firefighters were called in. They were told it was just an ordinary roof fire. No one gave them proper protection. They climbed up into a storm of invisible death, armed with nothing but hoses and courage. Some firefighters felt a strange taste in their mouths, metallic, like coins. Their skin began to itch and burn. They had no idea they were standing next to an open nuclear core. One by one, they started to feel sick. Vomiting, dizziness, weakness. Acute radiation sickness had already begun. Yet still they fought the fire to protect the plant, the town, their families sleeping just a few kilometers away. That night, Many of them became heroes. Many of them would never see another sunrise. Back in Pripyat, curious residents stepped onto their balconies. In the distance, they saw a strange blue glow above the plant, dancing in the sky like the northern lights. Children pointed at it, thinking it was beautiful. Some people walked closer to get a better look, standing on a nearby bridge, watching the fire as if it were a show. They didn't know that the glow came from gamma radiation ionizing the air. They didn't know that the Bridge of Death would later become a symbol of tragic innocence. In the early hours, plant managers and officials argued in smoky rooms. Some refused to believe the reactor had exploded. They insisted it was just a fire, that the core was intact. They ordered workers closer to measure radiation, sending them straight into danger. Meters maxed out. The numbers were so high they thought the instruments were broken. They weren't broken. The dose was simply off the scale. Precious hours were lost to denial, confusion, and fear of telling the truth. The morning sun rose over Pripyat as if nothing had happened. Children played outside. People went fishing, shopping, walking their dogs. No one had been warned. It took nearly 36 hours before buses rolled into the city. Through loudspeakers, a calm voice announced an temporary evacuation. Just 3 days, they said. Take only what you need. You'll be back soon. But they never came back. Pripyat became a frozen city, a snapshot of a life abandoned in a hurry. While the people left, the reactor continued to burn. Radioactive particles rose into the sky, carried by the wind across Ukraine, Belarus, and beyond. Fields, forests, rivers, all silently contaminated. You could not see it. You could not smell it. But it was there. Farmers hundreds of kilometers away would one day learn that their land, their food, their homes had been touched by that night's mistake. To stop the burning reactor, helicopters flew again and again over the glowing wreckage. Pilots dropped sand, lead, and boron into the open core, trying to smother the fire. Each flight meant another exposure, another invisible dose. Later, a giant concrete sarcophagus was built around Reactor 4 to lock away what was left. But the scars of that night were already carved into the earth, the air, and the lives of thousands. For many who worked that night, the cost was their health, and often their lives. Firefighters, plant workers, engineers, and soldiers. Some knew the risks, many did not. Some were honored as heroes, others were forgotten in paperwork. The world would learn the word Chernobyl as a warning, that secrets, denial, and flawed systems can turn a simple test into a catastrophe. Today, Pripyat stands empty. Ferris wheels that never turned for May Day celebrations, schools with notebooks still open on desks, toys left on beds. Nature has slowly taken back the streets. Trees grow through cracked pavement. Wild animals wander where children once played. It is a city frozen in time, a silent witness to the night everything went wrong. The story of Chernobyl is not just about a broken reactor. It's about human decisions, pride, pressure, and fear. About what happens when warnings go ignored and truth is buried. From Chernobyl, the world learned hard lessons about nuclear safety, transparency, and the price of mistakes on a global scale. But those lessons were written in real lives, lost homes, and a land that will remain changed for generations. On that April night in 1986, a series of small decisions and hidden flaws collided in a single moment. Chernobyl became a name that the world would never forget. As we look back now, we don't just see a disaster. We see a warning, a reminder of how fragile our systems are when we think nothing can go wrong.